Welcome back, guys.
Welcome back. This is episode 2, Calmer Waters. This is the good years.
So today we're gonna go over the wedding planning.
I think we're gonna go over the wedding planning, and we're also gonna look a little bit at communication procrastination.
That's what we're calling it. That's kind of where we started. It wasn't intentional. It was kind of just something that happened where we started communicating less and less, and how easily that happens in marriages, because you get busy with life, you get busy with kids.
You get to the point where it's a subtle change. It's the small changes. Like, we were talking earlier with each other and saying, there was no huge blow up or fight or argument or anything that we can point to, but the little things that you let slide and don't say anything about inevitably become your baseline for your relationship, and it's
the foundation from where you're operating.
It comes from the foundation. Yeah, it comes to that foundation, and that foundation becomes, I don't want to rock the boat because I know that this is going to be a hot button, or this is going to be, something we're going to argue about.
Dude, we straight up jumped into it today.
Yeah,
okay, we're going to try to be more time conscious.
Back up.
It is 1:15. We will try to keep this at 30 minutes.
30 minutes or less. 30 minutes or less, so your next one's free. So we're going to start with
last week. Wait, we ended last week talking about the proposal.
Yes.
The wah wah.
Wah wah wah.
Okay,
wah.
yes.
The wah wah.
Yeah, still married you. Okay.
Still here. So the proposal happened. We talked about that last week, and then we go into the wedding itself and the wedding planning.
Wedding planning first.
Wedding planning.
We wedding planned very, very quickly. We originally planned on getting married in October of 2013.
And we pushed it to March.
We pushed it
1st.
back because we had family who could make it, because it was literally like a month notice, right?
Yeah, it was.
So we pushed it back to March 1st. And I mean, it happened pretty smoothly. We kind of did a lot of DIY stuff, so to save money, because we already have kids.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to blow everything on a party. Plus, we already got married at that point.
We got married at the courthouse.
October 1st.
Well, we got married a couple times.
Okay, September 29th.
But she didn't like that date, so we went back and changed it to October 1st. So married twice at the courthouse, and then at that point, we said, okay, March 1st will be the actual wedding. Walking down the aisle where people see us.
Give people a little more time to plan to be there. Our families and such. So then what happened at the wedding?
The wedding, neither of our mothers showed up, which was upsetting. We both wanted to have our families there with us. Both our fathers showed up, which was awesome.
Props to the dads.
So that was great.
We found out years later that the reason why the moms didn't show up was because they did not support us getting married.
Obviously, I've been married twice before. My mom was like, well, we'll see what happens with this before I commit. So that was my side. And then your mother?
She had very strong feelings about me ever getting married again, I guess.
Yeah.
And she may or may not have somewhat coerced some family members to pick sides, and we didn't win. She won. Love my mom. Something we still have to basically talk about and get through, because it's just one of those things that in our family it hasn't really been communicated. We haven't really aired that out and discussed, like, hey, it sucked that you didn't show up to our wedding. So if
you're watching the live video,
yeah. So
feel free to call.
The impact of that for us, for me, I can speak for me. The impact of that for me, long term, is that it really jaded me on our wedding anniversary every year. It's like, it doesn't really matter. My mom wasn't there.
Yeah, family wasn't there.
We call it a fake anniversary or non-anniversary.
Whatever, yeah. We don't really look at it as a big.
We look at October 1st as the day we got married, because our wedding was like a celebration, and we definitely enjoyed having some close friends and family there that was able to show up. But as far as our moms not being there, yeah, I'm gonna say that for me is still something that stings a little.
Yeah, I mean, we both wanted all our family to be there, so obviously there's still some pain wrapped around the fact that they weren't, for both of us. It's unfortunate. There's no way to change that.
We can't go back in time.
Can't go back in time.
For sure.
Sorry, this isn't going to be the episode where we have a time machine. You see us go back.
And then we had our little honeymoon. We stayed at a hotel the first night after the wedding.
And then we had my sister, your sister, and your dad there. And they had issues getting the kids to sleep, so we had to tell them to go to bed. And our honeymoon kind of got interrupted there. It was kind of a one-night thing, and then we went back home to go to Ruidoso, and then...
We planned... Okay, so I planned a honeymoon to go to Ruidoso and Albuquerque, you know, just get out of El Paso for a little bit. But the plans had to change.
Yeah, the plans had to change because...
Our honeymoon turned into a family. A family moon, yeah.
Because of issues that my sister had, you know, she didn't feel like she could handle the kids.
We honestly didn't feel comfortable after what happened on that one night.
Yeah, so we took the kids with us, and it ended up turning into a family moon, which is great for the family, but not
for us.
Not for us.
We didn't prioritize.
Yeah, we weren't prioritizing us at that point. Even early on, even in the beginning, we were kind of not prioritizing her and I as a priority.
And one thing, I had done some research before considering getting remarried again, and it's one of the difficulties when you're a single parent is that your kids come first, right? They're your everything you do revolves around them and what's going to benefit them. Even when you decide to go back to school, you're doing it so that you can support your kids. But in every bit of research that I did, when it comes to blended families, your spouse has to come first, which is, again, not the norm for our society. Our society is your kids come first. Even when you're happily married, a lot of marriages, they put their kids first and raising them and making them happy and making sure that they're taken care of.
Yeah, I understand that idea. I do. But obviously, again, the priority for everyone in the house to be happy has to be each other.
Has to be the marriage.
It has to be the marriage. And you have to, I mean, even without a blended family, even just being married to someone and being a single person to married person with no children, both sides, for each other's relationship. So that, because in this, we realized that, you know, her and I being happy and being married and happily married together with each other has second and third order effects on the family. You know, our kids are happier.
It has a domino effect.
So it makes the kids happier. It makes the family function better, especially in that sense. So
like we, throughout our marriage, like
prioritizing each other ends up becoming where everything kind of falls into its proper place.
But think about it. We did not prioritize each other because even on anniversaries, like what did we do for anniversaries, even in the good years?
Not a lot.
We wouldn't take time to go to a hotel by ourselves or go on a vacation by ourselves. We didn't do any of that stuff because, you know, we have kids and we gotta make sure they're good.
And that's the thing is you can't, there's always going to be the excuse, I have kids or I have this or I have that, but you have to figure out a way, even if it's a small way, to make your spouse a priority in your life daily.
Because year after year, I mean,
it's only going to get tougher. The less you do it, the less you exercise that muscle, the harder it's going to be, and then you're going to look at it, it's going to be some mountain you can't climb.
It's like we were talking about, you are creating neural pathways of how you handle things by just living it, by the experience that you're having in that moment. That creates neural pathways of how you're going to respond next time to something.
You start setting precedents.
So next anniversary we did.
You start setting precedents with each other and saying, they're like, well, I know that he's not going to do crap, or I know she's not going to do crap, or we're not going to do anything. And you're setting yourself up.
Finances are tight, or there's
whatever.
Always really good reasons for why you're not prioritizing.
There's always a ton of good reasons. Kids, priorities, or different priorities, work, you know, whatever. Finances, all of it. There can always be a different excuse on why you can't do it.
But then after that, we started planning on living in El Paso long term, right? Because we wanted to retire here, we wanted to stay here. But the Army had other plans. And
then it said, hey, what do you want to do? You need to leave El Paso. You've been here 5 years. So, you know, it gave me a couple options. One, I could go be an RTC instructor in Boise, Idaho. There. Provolone.
Provost,
Utah.
Sounded interesting.
Or San Juan, Puerto Rico. So, you know.
Well, that was the first round where they told us we could go to Hawaii, and I was like, yes,
and we were going to go to Hawaii, but it closed out. So then we ended up with San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Well, because it was between, at that point, San Juan and Port Irving, California, and I was not going there. No, thank you. Sorry, California. Not
So
sorry.
so we took to Puerto Rico and we went off to Puerto Rico for 2
I was so excited about
years.
that because I lived in Puerto Rico as a kid with my family for about 2, almost 3 years. So I had the child's view of what Puerto Rico was and how
Gotcha.
exciting and laid back and everything that would be. And then we did take a trip by ourselves to go house hunting, thanks to my parents. They watched the kids for us, and we took a weekend trip trying to house hunt. And we quickly discovered that Puerto Rico was not what I remembered it to be when I was 11. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
Things look differently as an adult.
Yeah. A lot
So
differently.
that was kind of an adventure. It was fun, but it was hectic and stressful. We ended up moving to Puerto Rico without a place to live. We were Airbnb-ing it up. And once we got there with the kids, it was like, we need to find a place to live.
Quickly.
Like now, we can't afford this Airbnb life. And
so-
so we felt like we were getting through big hurdles and things together, and we felt really blessed.
We found a place. I mean, we were really blessed, and we were not doing bad. But and again, like we were talking about, her and I were talking about earlier today, it's not really like in these moments, like even in the middle, like the middle it is now in the good times, the good years. In these moments, you're setting precedents. You're setting the stage. You know, by doing, because we would have arguments that we would put a pin in and never get back to. And, you know, even
Just trying to keep the peace.
just trying to keep the peace and not rock the boat. And
Thinking, oh, that's not that big enough of a deal to...
it's not that big enough of a deal to make a big deal out of it or to fight about it or argue about it. We love each other, we'll just forget it. But the problem with that is that you're setting yourself up by, and that's what we're calling communication procrastination, is you're procrastinating on communicating with one another, and then you're setting yourself up for worse in the future, because then you have that precedent in your mind where you're saying, okay, well, I just won't bring it up. It's whatever at this point. And you have this, maybe not resentment, but
Unresolved issues are starting to build up.
Are starting to build, and you have...
You won't even remember what the argument was
like
about.
we
but
have
the
no idea. Like
feeling
we
will
both
stay
together
there.
this morning were like, hey, we don't remember arguing about much, or not, or even what the arguments were about. But the fact of the matter is, you remember that feeling like, okay, I'm just gonna not say anything, or I'm gonna shut down, or I'm gonna not talk, and we'll just
Don't push that button.
sidestep it so that we don't get into an argument again or whatever. So
Plus, we didn't know how to handle arguments at that point.
you do that enough where that becomes the normal for you, and then all of a sudden you have a situation where you're just you never talk about anything. You just never get around to it because you're like, well, I'm not going to talk about that, or I'm not going to. You just sidestep until.
Well, again,
before
nothing
you know it-
seems big enough of a deal to bring it up and start an argument, because these are little things, and it's like, just let it go.
Yeah,
Just let it go. But you know what's happening every time you're letting it go? You, in your mind and in your heart, are building up, like you've got a backpack and you start building up little things that over time become resentment.
You're putting weight on your relationship that you don't need.
And it comes up in the next argument. You
it-
won't bring it up necessarily, what you're talking about, but you will bring up, like, the resentment, that anger into this. Like,
yeah.
all of a sudden, you're way more upset about this little thing, and
Yeah.
your partner's like, what the heck?
Yeah. So
Thought it was a small deal.
So even with it being a small deal or little things build the big things. Like all these little things that you're not talking about end up becoming silent and slowly progressive. Like what we realized today and before is that it was a slow build to getting to where it was bad. And the slow build is all these little resentments that you have and these little slights against each other. Nothing that's huge or nothing that's like this big deal. But in the end, it becomes a big deal because you've let it build up over so much time. And if it, the best advice that we can give anyone is don't procrastinate on communicating with your partner.
Even the little things
Even
that
the
seem
little crap,
insignificant.
even the little stuff. It might seem like little stuff right now, but you might let it go, but you're gonna let it go, but you're gonna still have that lingering feeling like you didn't walk away from it.
Well, like one of the things,
with
for
a good
example,
feeling.
one of the little things that used to bug me, and I didn't say anything initially, and by the time I did start saying something, I was like overtly angry over it. And it was when we would be walking together and you would walk 2 to 3 paces ahead of me. And it was one of those things that I was like, he just walks fast. But it would bug me, but I wouldn't say anything. And then like years later, I did start saying like, don't you notice I'm back here? Like, what?
But it was with
Hello?
more.
But it was with a lot of sass.
It was a lot of sass, a lot of resentment, because she let it go for so long that, you know, it just built up into something that was bigger than it needed.
Completely unnecessary.
Completely unnecessary
to go that route.
and completely bigger than it needed to be.
And he would respond by like slowing down to a turtle or snail's pace. Like he would overtly just be extremely fine. I'll slow down. And then I'm like more annoyed because now you're being passive aggressive about it.
Yeah. So, and then that's what happens. You both
Little
build up
dumb stuff.
you little dumb crap that you build up and let become passive aggressive things, or you let become these other things. And these are steps. These are steps to becoming a mountain that you feel like you can't overcome. These little steps build to this huge, you know, iceberg of
You
a
know what?
mountain.
Let's switch gears. Another thing that happened early on in our marriage is that we, after the wedding incident and the wedding planning and our mom's not showing up, we started taking on the approach of us against the world.
Yes.
Right? And in doing that, we inadvertently started pushing everyone else out.
So
Good
we both
or bad,
had
everyone
so we both
else
had
out.
friends. Obviously, we both had friends that we hung out with on our own
Prior to.
and what we've realized now through all this is that you need outside people.
Outside contact.
You know, outside contact. Peopling, what we call peopling here, but
We don't like to people.
we don't like to people,
But we know that it's important.
and we're working on peopling now, because, you know, the problem with it is our problem is that we get happy with one another and we'll cocoon.
And all we want to do is spend time with each other.
Spend time with each other, which isn't a bad thing. But on the other turn of that point is
Everything in moderation, guys.
Everything in moderation. Everything needs to be in moderation. And, you know, having friends and having the outside ability outside your home to do things gives you that breather. Gives you that breather, and it gives you the ability to miss one another.
And you're happy to reconnect.
And you're happy to be back together at the end of the night or the end of the day or whatever the case may be.
So we stopped peopling for a while.
We stopped peopling for a while.
And then we had a struggle to people.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was like, I can make friends. I can go hang out with people. But then I would feel bad that he's not hanging out with anybody. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. Let's just hang out together. And then there were times where we had the opportunity to go on dates because the kids were with their dad on weekends. And we still didn't people. I was like, we'll just stay home.
We would
plan dates.
We would plan dates.
We wouldn't plan dates.
We would just
and then we just wouldn't.
We would just be in the house and just be with each other.
We're like, we're happy. And we were happy in those moments. We weren't even mad. We're like, we're happy at home.
We're happy. We're homebodies. We're happy together.
We're going to order Chinese
and just hang
stay
out.
in bed all day and just relax.
So it's good to find a balance. I think in the end of it all, we realize that we need to find a balance between cocooning and having that time, because obviously bonding with one another and communicating and talking and being together is important, you know, because obviously your marriage and your spouse and your relationship with your significant other has to be one of the top priorities in your life for you to be with this person.
But they shouldn't be your everything.
But it shouldn't be your only priority. Whether or not you have children or not, whether or not you know, whatever the case may be with your situation, you know, you still need to have outside people to speak to talk to enjoy company with, and to be
together and individually.
And be able to come back to one another and say, man, I missed you, and here's what's, you know, going on with me, and here's what we talked about, or here's what, you know, the situation that happened, you know, with this funny story, whatever, you know, and have that balance in your life, because without it, you become each other's only and sole person, and that's a lot of responsibility to feel. And if you feel like it's easy for you to feel like you're disappointing the other person, if you're not, like, I come home from work and I'm tired and I don't feel like doing stuff, and she's been with the kids all day, and then all she's had is me. So if I'm not into it, then all of a sudden she's got nothing. Mm-hmm. So especially
being a stay-home mom or homeschooling mom, especially in a new place. Sometimes you don't have outside interaction yet, and all you have is your spouse. So initially, it's okay, that's understandable, but you have to make an effort to reach out and connect with other people. Because at the end of the day, if he does have a hard day and he comes home, and I've had a rough day, and he unloads on me and I unload on him, now we're just both like, gosh, life sucks.
We're both, you just feel
Oh, that was
done.
crap.
Yeah, it's just completely
So we
done
can't
time.
be that for each other. We should definitely be, I recommend being your spouse's best friend, but not only friend.
Yeah.
So we can switch gears now and talk about, so those good years led to us wanting to have more children, right? Initially we were kind of like, yeah, maybe we'll see.
If it happens, God's will. If it happens, it'll happen. But then we really started kicking it up to where we wanted to have a child.
We were proactive about it.
And we were proactive. That's a good way to say it. We were proactive about it.
And then it wasn't happening.
It wasn't happening, and we'd been married 3 years at that point. We'd
And
been
it
married
was
almost 3 years. And the funny side story here is that we were looking at fostering a child so that we could bring another child in, because these are the good years. This is where we're like, we love each other.
We have so much love.
So much love in this house.
We
want to share this love with other kids that need it. So, we were moments, we were already gone to the classes and we were talking about fostering. And then...
And for me, after, it was like month after month after month after not being
just
pregnant.
Just disappointed in the fact that she wasn't pregnant.
It was really starting to get to me. And I had a conversation with God. And my conversation was like, look, God, I have this desire in my heart that I can only assume was put there by you to have another child. So please tell me what it is you want from me. Because if you don't want me to have another biological child, that's fine. Please take that feeling out of my heart so I can cope with it. And I was happy to foster and adopt. I was happy to. So I kind of, in my conversation with God, we talked about it.
We talked about it.
I put it on the fridge. I told him I'm doing the research.
30 days. With 30 days from now, if something's not going on, then...
If I'm not pregnant 30 days from now, we put a time clock on God, guys.
We did.
We were really bold.
We were bold.
We put a time clock on it. We said, in 30 days I am not pregnant. I am calling this number. We are
doing it.
On it.
We're doing it. And
stuck it to the fridge.
Less than a week later?
No, it was 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later? Was it 2 weeks later?
Yeah, about 2 weeks later.
So 2 weeks later, she comes out of the bathroom. She's like, go get me a pregnancy test. I'm pregnant. I know it. I go to the store, which in Puerto Rico is always an adventure. I go to the store, go get 15, 20 pregnancy tests, right? We're going to just test the crap out of this. She does the first one positive, does the second one positive, does the third one positive. We're like, we're pregnant. So then she goes to...
Those other two were for him, not for me.
Yeah.
I knew after the first one I was like, pregnant.
Yeah.
I knew before the test I was pregnant.
She knew she was pregnant.
I just knew.
She went to the clinic on post and they did the blood test, which is like the for sure thing. The official thing. And that was, just completely, you're pregnant. So we were overjoyed. It was great because we really wanted to have another child.
And then it was the hunt for a doctor.
Oh, the horrible hunt for a doctor.
In Puerto Rico, I don't know if you guys know, the situation in Puerto Rico has been pretty difficult since about 2014. There was a mass exodus of a lot of professionals, which included a lot of medical professionals. Yeah. So finding an OBGYN out there is kind of a struggle because when you do find one, you find one that instantly wants you put you on the books for a C-section because that's really all they have room for. They have way too many pregnant women, which is great.
There was
but not enough doctors to care for them.
There was a lot of problems with the OBGYNs that she had seen. I was in training, so I wasn't there at first for the first. I found out we were pregnant, and I had to go. And then 7 weeks in, on our 7-week checkup.
9-week checkup.
9-week checkup. I went to the appointment to confirm that they saw, everything was going okay. And she'd already gotten crap news from an OBGYN before that. Just horrible. That one was bad. And I went there with her the second time to see this guy, so it would basically be like, screw you.
I felt a little resentful that I went the first time by myself because of how that turned out. The doctor was like, oh, it might just be a blighted ovum or something, which technically means that, there's a sac, but there's no baby growing. And he said it so nonchalantly, like it was no big deal. Like he had no idea the struggle that we've been through for 3 years trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, very traumatic for her. And unfortunately,
it was heartbreaking.
I wasn't there. Yeah. So when we went back and, the guy walks in, he's like, oh yeah, there it is, no problems.
We
9
fired
weeks.
him after that.
Yeah, we quit after we fired him after that, and we went to somebody else. But then the next guy we went to, the first thing he
second we
said,
walked in was like, "Here's my calendar."
C-section,
C-section,
day of time, and so we had issues with that. So we decided at that point that we wanted to do
Find another route. I was like, how
found a
else?
different route. We didn't know.
We were looking for a midwife. I was looking for a midwife.
And a little
I had no
backstory.
idea it would be a home birth at first.
A little backstory about that too is also Raquel had done 2 regular births, vaginal births, and then she was doing a.
I had a C-section.
Yeah.
She had a C-section.
She had a C-section with
RJ.
with Ryan, our oldest son, and so after that,
I knew I did not want that.
OBGYNs, every one of them were like, "Oh, you had a C-section before, so C-section now." So when we went the midwife route, they were like, "Oh yeah, you're fine.
You can do a VBAC.
You can do a VBAC.
Vaginal birth after cesarean.
Yeah, vaginal.
So I was like, that's what I want.
So it worked out because they were more open to her doing that, and they're like, "Well, if it has to be a C-section, we'll go that route if we have to, but it's not the first option." And with the OBGYNs, it's like C-section first option. And,
Only option.
Yeah, only option. And if it happens,
But then we started,
whatever,
I started doing research on it. I bought all the books, all of them that had to do with home birthing, the supernatural childbirth. I have like a ton of books. I can give you guys recommendations if you want some. They were really, really great resources. Because home birthing after a C-section and all the fear that the medical professionals will put on you, we hear about all the risks, and you could die, the baby could die, everyone could die, your husband could die. I mean, it was so intense that there was some fear that was planted in there just from that. So it was really overcoming the fear internally. Even when I didn't recognize that the fear was there, it was.
And you also got to think during this time in Puerto Rico, Zika was
the
Zika
was
craze.
Also going to
the Zika pandemic
have
was
your
going
child
on.
born with microencephaly. That was the other.
So that was the other thing with the doctors, and the midwife was like, "No, I'm not worried about it at all." Mm-hmm. And the midwife we had was amazing, by the way. The midwife we got,
Yarilis.
yeah, you were great. Awesome. She was awesome. She was amazing at the moment. She was amazing at the night that we had the baby. Everything was really good with the midwife. So we were very happy.
Stop for a second, because I want to touch on the subject that while I was preparing and reading and learning everything about home birthing, everything that could go right, everything that could go wrong, what to do in those situations. Honestly, the key to overcoming the fear is educating yourself more. So for me, every time a fear would come up, like, what if this happens? What if I hemorrhage? Then you start researching and you look that up and you find, okay, so if you hemorrhage and you have a midwife, this is how they would handle it. Worst case scenario, this is what would go down. So that really helped me to kind of calm all those fears. Every time a fear would pop up, I'd be like, okay, worst case scenario, I'd research it, I'd look it up, find the answers, be like, I'm good. So then I started sharing books with him. I was like, you need to read this. Because he was a little more nervous than I was. Because this was all new to him. He hadn't had a baby yet, much less one at home. Mm-hmm. So he was really nervous about it. And I started giving him books. But at the end of the day,
I was like half-ass reading them.
If at all.
Yeah. I read
which started kind of upsetting me that I felt like you were not as in this as I was.
And then, of course, she would not bring it up. So we go back to communication procrastination. I'm just not going to bring it up. And that resentment...
I'll just give him time to read it eventually.
That resentment and all that stuff just builds. Those little things like that, or even big things like that, build to where you start up in the slope. To where this mountain becomes...
This mountain became a bit of a hill at that point because, let's call it an iceberg. It was like a baby iceberg, but it was. Because by the time we got around to nearing the birth, on the surface, everything was great. I was looking forward to it. And beneath the surface, I was kind of resentful of the fact that I felt he hadn't done as much research as I did. He wasn't... I was concerned that he would be worried during the birth and that his energy and vibe would affect me negatively. So I was mentally prepared to kick his butt out of the room if it needed to come to that. I mean, but it was to the point where I had planned the music I wanted to play.
But at all this point, neither of us were communicating that to one another. My concerns were somewhat communicated. Her concerns were somewhat communicated, but somewhat is not communicating. That's just telling you some things and leaving the rest out because you don't want to have an argument or a fight or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we were already steering the ship in the wrong direction. We were already moving toward.
Well, and even prior to that, I had some PTSD moments during the pregnancy, because my last pregnancy before that, I was married to someone else who had an affair while I was pregnant. So I didn't even realize I had PTSD from that. It really crept up on me because I started to feel like I couldn't trust him. I started to feel worried about what he was doing at work. I mean, he worked at a college campus.
I was an RTC instructor.
You know what I mean? So those little things start, and I was like, and I would sit down and think, I was like, but he's never done anything to show me that I should be worried about this. This is really weird to me that I feel this way. I started journaling at that point to try to wrap my head around my thoughts, and I realized that the resentment and the fear that I had as far as that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with my ex and my previous experience in pregnancy. So I actually reached out to my ex, and I told him what was going on with me. Thankfully, he was super gracious and understanding that I was going through some stuff, that I still felt hurt. Stuff because we never discussed it. Once that happened in that marriage, he would not talk about it. I would ask questions. He wouldn't. It was just, you're talking to a wall. No, take that elsewhere. So thankfully at this point in my relationship with my ex, he was open to hearing me out and understanding what I was going through. And he flat out apologized to me. And it was great. It was what I needed. I cried a lot. Pretty sure he was upset too. But we made peace with it. We finally talked about that. And it was something that really helped me to stop putting those fears and projecting that onto Mark, because it had nothing to do with Mark. Nothing at all. So I was really happy that I at least worked through that. But it took a lot. It was like week after week of me starting to feel this way before I finally said, shoot, I'm just going to say something to him. And if he doesn't take it well, he doesn't take it well, but I need to say something. So then when we get to the birth, the music I planned out and everything,
changed.
Beautiful. I didn't want to hear any music with words. I don't care if it was Christian or not. It was like, shut that crap off. It's driving me crazy. I needed classical music or just nothing. We had our midwife who had her assistant. We had a doula. We had our friend Lisa there, and then us and the kids. And when it came down to it, I didn't want anybody there but him at all.
When it came down to it,
which surprised me, because I thought he was going to be the first one on the chopping block.
When it came down to it, the only person she went in the room. We were in the room by ourselves for a very long time, and we just did. We did just us, and then at the very end, when Maxim was coming out, that's when the midwife came in and out he came, because he came quick. Water birth. Oh,
so what we did during the pregnancy too is I had chiropractic care.
Yeah. That was a key.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, that was super key
That was
for
such
her.
a different pregnancy compared to previous pregnancies.
The birth was quick. It was the 3 hours. I mean, it was 3-4 hours? 4 hours tops
3 hours.
of labor and then birth. And then that was it. But
and
the
there was,
chiropractic
I didn't
care,
even push you guys. This baby flew out all by himself.
Yeah. He's like, there's the head, boom, gone, out. He's out. And he was there. He was with us.
Water birth, chiropractic care.
Yeah. Water birth and chiropractic care. Chiropractic care was key for her birth. I think that really, really helped her a lot in the end. So yeah,
it was fast.
It was fast. You're right. It was fast, Lisa. It was super quick. It was like 7:30. She said, "Let's call the midwife." We called the midwife. She got there around 9, and then by 10:55,
he was out.
He was out. So, boom! It was just quick. His birth was that quick just because of, I think, of all the pre-care and then we discovered some of the vitamins he took, the triple lecithin for the
lecithin. Oh yeah, mastitis. If y'all have ever breastfed, or if you ever plan on breastfeeding, just go ahead and buy some lecithin. I think that's how it's pronounced. Just have some in your stash because you're going to need it. Look, Max is here. He just had his birthday.
He's 4 now.
Talking about his birth. He just had his birthday this weekend on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah. So he's 4 now. But yeah, there's home care that we did, vitamins and other things that she did, and those things really, really helped. Those really helped. Chiropractic care helped, and just everything with the water and the home birth. I think the privacy of it. was a lot better than doing hospital birth. We definitely didn't want that.
Especially because in some hospitals in Puerto Rico, you can't have your spouse there.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I'm the only one she wanted there with her, so that would definitely not work out.
No.
So, in that sense, you look at it that way. In the end, she only wanted me there for the birth, and so we were in good years. We were in good times, but mixed in with those good times, we'd already
set the stage.
We'd already
for communication issues.
the communication issues were already setting up. The little resentments that were building up. These little things that affect your marriage long term.
And I think that's really when we started being less open to being vulnerable with each other.
Yes.
We started kind of building up our walls for some reason.
Yeah, we started building up walls with each other, and trying to not talk about things like all these sidestep issues and sidestep this and sidestep that.
It's kind of a reminder that even when the good times are happening, even when you're on vacation, if something comes up, speak. Because those moments are the ones that are literally creating the stage. You're creating the foundation for your marriage. And if you don't say if you don't say something when it's small, how are you going to be able to say something when it's something big? So even the tiny little things that seem insignificant, you need to communicate that with your spouse. And one of the things that we had talked about this past week with each other was the 3 C's, and that's communication. I'm waiting to see if he was paying attention, y'all.
Oh, sorry. Communication. What's the second C? I forgot the 3 C's.
Compassion.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of floating
He's all over the place.
I'm all over the place.
Where's your brain at? What are you thinking right now? Actually, tell me that.
I was looking to make sure my phone didn't ring, and then I was listening to Max in the background.
He went to his nothing box, y'all. Husband.
Snuck into my nothing box.
Call them out when they go to their nothing box,
yeah,
okay?
I snuck into my nothing
That's one
box.
of those little, speaking of those little things that you need to point out and bring them up when they happen. That's one for me. Like, he went somewhere.
Yeah.
He wasn't here.
Yeah, I wasn't here for a second.
Welcome back, baby.
I'm sorry. Welcome back.
So, all right, so we're going to leave it as a cliffhanger till he remembers.
Communication. Compassion. Well, I can speak to the second C. Compassion. And when we talk about compassion, is something that we've talked about, is it's compassion on both sides. So if I say something to her, I need to be compassionate that I might be telling her something that she either doesn't know, doesn't want to hear, doesn't particularly like. And then she needs to have compassion for me and say, okay, I understand what you're saying. You need to give each other time to process things and to understand one another. And then come back and understand that what you're saying, anything you're saying to each other is out of love. And that you're trying to... Same team. Because
for years, even in those good years, anytime we would say something to call each other out on something, it felt like an attack. Coming from an enemy.
Yeah, so you don't want to...
And it did not feel like encouragement from a teammate.
You always have to remember that you come to each other with respect and talk to each other with respect, obviously. But also you need to remember that you need to have compassion for the other person, because what they're saying could be difficult for them to tell you.
And you hearing it have to have compassion for the person, your spouse, speaking it to you. Yeah. Because it might not be easy for them to even say this to
to
you.
get it out to you. So, I mean, compassion on both sides. That way, you have the ability to come to a...
You want me to tell you the 3rd C?
Compromise.
There he is.
Communication. Compassion and compromise. I just thought of it. So, compromise. Because when I said that, I was thinking compromise.
Led you there. Yeah.
I was thinking compromise.
Led you there. There it is.
your ability to compromise with each other.
But let's talk about the different types of compromise that there are. And you touched on it last week. There's the fantasy in which no compromise is necessary because you both just happen to agree. Then there's the compromise in which you, in your communication, realize that this particular thing is not that big of a deal to you, and you're willing to just let your partner have what they want.
Prime example. The other day, she's like, hey, at the end of the day, I need 30 minutes on my own. Like 30 minutes to just veg and like look through Facebook and
not be needed by anyone.
Not be needed by anyone.
Not communication-wise.
The first question I had for her was like, can I be around? can I be in the room or near, or do
You
I need
need
to
me
go
gone.
somewhere else? You need me to go somewhere else to do that. She's like, no, you can be sitting beside me.
Just don't talk to me.
Just don't talk to me. And the compromise was I was like, I'm fine with that. 30 minutes of vegging or more to kind of clear your mind. So the compromise there is one of the sets of compromise she's talking about, is where it doesn't matter giving her 30 minutes to kind of not be needed or not be bothered or not be whatever is easy for me, because I can do the same. Go to my nothing box and veg, watch TV while she's doing her 30-40 minutes an hour or whatever. So that compromise is easy. Just give it.
If it's not something that is like a big thing for you, and you're willing to let your partner have what they want, do it.
Perfect.
The other compromise, which is the hard one, it's the one where I firmly stand on this is what I want, and you firmly stand on this is what you want. How do we make this happen? Because at the end of the day, we're a couple. So we compromise, right? We communicate until we get as close as possible to the middle. It's not always going to be the middle, but the goal is to get as close as possible here. And that type of compromise technically sucks, right? Because you're not getting what you want.
Nobody get what's
and I'm not getting what I want.
The way we put it is she's not getting what she wants, I'm not getting what I want, but we are getting what we want, which is
what we need.
And what we need, which is when you walk away from that, you have to walk away and say, this is the best for us. And the best
if you
for
feel
us to
like
function.
You are unsatisfied with the compromise you reached, then you were not done
You're not done
communicating
talking.
about
You're not
this
done.
compromise.
Yeah, you're not compromised. If you either one of you walk away and you're like, this sucks, like this is not the best we can do, then you need to go back and say, hey, look, we need to talk a little more, because we need to get to a spot where both of us walk away from this and say, this is the best we can do for us.
I'm satisfied.
I'm satisfied with this decision.
We did our best to come to an agreement.
Yeah. And come to a compromise that is best for us to function as a healthy and
you got to really think of it. That type
couple.
of compromise is a negotiation.
And
honestly,
you walk in,
really
you're gonna be negotiating. It's wheeling and dealing.
You're negotiating. You're trying to bring the person onto your side to see things from your point of view.
And the other part of that is, with that compromise, is that you have to be super duper into communication, because you have to communicate your point, and you have to listen, which is the other half of communication that people don't a lot of times get. Just because we talk about communication doesn't just mean you're talking. Communication includes listening to your partner and listening to
listening to rebut, but actually listening to understand.
Process what they're telling you, try and see it from their point of view, try and understand where they're coming from, and then from that place, say, okay, I understand what you're saying, I understand what you want, and this is what I'm willing to do.
Or this is what I want, and this is
what
why.
I want, and this
That's
is
like
why.
step one.
And then once you get past those wants and needs and bargaining things, you get to the spot where you talk about, this is what I'm willing to give, this is what I'm willing to give,
But
and
listen,
trying to get to that.
Very
middle.
careful in this time of negotiation and compromise that you never say stuff like, well, I think that's stupid because.
Yeah.
Now, my friend, that is not going to negotiate you into anything.
You can have an opinion, obviously, but none of it needs to be
insulting to the other person.
To the other person's opinion, one, and anything that you say needs to start with I or end with me, because they're your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings, not your partner's. And you can't superimpose. Now, it doesn't mean that, she has a great argument and I say, you know what, you're right. I see your point there. And I can give on that, and that part of the compromise. But, it's not always going to work that way. So, you can be adamant in your argument. Your argument is in the sense that you're making the argument for your point.
Making your case.
But you can't attack the other person. You can't, because you got to remember,
when you start their thought process or their feelings.
When you start this, you got to remember, you love this person. You love them.
You're trying to be happily married.
You're trying to be happily married. You're trying to say, hey, I respect this person because I'm married to them. I married them because I love them and I respect them. So if you love and respect somebody, you're obviously not going to insult them. Or not intentionally. Now, obviously, sometimes unintentionally you do that, and that's unfortunate, and you have to apologize. But You shouldn't outright be attacking.
Oh, speaking of apologies, I'm sorry that you feel that way.
It's not an apology, apparently.
Apparently, he says it's
not
not
an
an apology. It is not acknowledging. It's not actually being sorry for
your
what
part of it.
hurt the other partner.
It's not actually being sorry for your part of it. So that's true.
Just a tidbit in there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you feel that way. That's some condescending stuff. That's not going to get you anywhere.
So
no brownie points for that apology.
Walking into any kind of compromise, you need to think of that second C, compassion. And you need to have compassion for your partner and your significant other, and then say, okay, from that compassion and a place of love and respect, I'm going to talk to them about how I don't agree with them and figure out a way that we can come to some sort of arrangement or agreement or compromise that will be best for us. Because
even and especially in the good years,
when
things are calm,
those are the best times to. That's the best time.
When you need to
that's
lay
the best time
yeah.
to set that precedent where you're making those compromises and coming with compassion because you're in the good years.
Honestly, it's the best because you're talking about little stuff.
Yeah, and it's super hard when you're not in a good place and you are trying to do.
And it's been years.
It's been years, and it's those
and
communication.
The stuff is bigger now.
Yeah, the communication, the compassion, all that stuff is harder to get to, without getting angry and without getting all that resentment and all those old baggage.
Which honestly just comes from a place of feeling unheard. And 9 times out of 10, you are unheard because you did not speak. Sometimes you did speak and your partner just wasn't hearing you, but there's a good portion where it's just you weren't
just
saying
like
it.
what we're saying with the walk away with this is the best we could do for us. You need to be comfortable with that, 1, and 2. If you walk away and that's not the scenario, then that's on you. That's not on your partner. If you come to a compromise and you're not satisfied with it and you let it happen, that's your fault. That is not your partner's fault.
But then we have to also talk about, personally, for me, I know that I often, in the compromise, would just give whatever you want, whatever works for you. 1, because I just avoided conflict. And 2, because I always felt like I didn't value myself enough to voice my wants and my needs. I always thought, well, if it makes him happy, then byproduct, I'll be happy too because he's happy and I made him happy.
But that can't
newsflash.
That can't be your driving force.
Sometimes you can do that, but not every time. And if that's your go-to every time to give in to your partner, I strongly suggest you look into some therapy because you need to learn to value yourself. Your wants and needs are as important as your spouse.
And with her being that way, a lot of times,
yes,
even
Mary.
now. Even
talk.
Fantasy compromise. Yeah, the fantasy where you both disagree.
Time.
Oh, I agree with you completely. Oh, that's awesome.
But that's what we do in the beginning of relationships. Like, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, me
too.
I love that too. But with her being that way, now it's even more key that we communicate because we have to. I have to make sure that I'm not bullying. Or feeling like I'm bullying, not even intentionally bullying, but allowing her to just roll over and just be like whatever.
A good way to communicate your wants with your partner, or if you want to find out, better yet, if you want to find out what it is that your partner wants, ask them without stating what it is that you want, in your opinion. Just to get a baseline answer directly from them. Do not ask leading questions because if you are with a partner that is like me, if I can tell by your question that you want the answer to look like this or sound like this, that's where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I'm not really being truthful to myself and what I want. I'm just looking to make him happy because he's my husband and I want to make him happy. So yeah, once again, communication. Eventually, communication sounds like fun. It actually is something you enjoy.
We actually enjoy talking to each other.
Initially, it's hard.
It's so hard.
Like, he'll ask me a question, I'm like, let me think of how I'm going to answer this. Give me a second. Put a pin in that. I'll be right back. It's hard initially, especially if you haven't been doing it for 7 years.
Yeah, for a long time.
7 out of 8 years.
Yeah, 7 out of 8 years. So it gets difficult, but it's not a mountain that's too high to climb. If you love each other, because we love each other, and we obviously, have plans to be together for the rest of our lives, it's a small price to pay. It's a small ask for either one of you to look at it, and you don't look at it as work, and you don't look at it as a mountain you're climbing or a dragon you're slaying. It becomes easier over the course of time. It becomes second nature.
But
to
initially,
just
it's not fun.
Initially, it's rough, especially if you haven't been doing it. If you're doing it now, awesome for you. Great, that's great. You keep doing it. We're talking about, obviously with this, we're talking about us and our inability, to communicate, which is even in the good years. With the good years,
don't ever assume your partner just understands what you're thinking.
The small little things that are slowly building to the next episodes where it gets worse and things are going to get worse.
So on the next episode, we're going to be talking about rocking the boat, which is the afterbirth and the postpartum fun. So much fun. I loved you so much during that time.
Yeah.
That's sarcasm.
Yeah, that's sarcasm. That was not good. That was not great.
Those weren't my best years. I don't know who that chick was, but I didn't like her very much. I can't imagine that he did. So we'll be talking about that.
We'll be talking about that next episode. That's true. But again, like we were talking about, communication. Even in these good years, we still had underlying issues. We look at these as the good years. We mark these down as like these are the years that were great for us in our marriage, because obviously we wouldn't have made it this long if every year was crap. So obviously we had a lot of bunch of good years, or 3 or 4 good years where we thought we were doing well.
Okay, so wait. So now we totally forgot to say, hey, guess what? We're not marriage counselors.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, we're not.
Not professionals.
We're
at all.
also not going to be your typical traditional Christian couple.
We are Christian.
We are. But what you're going to hear from us in some of these episodes coming up is not going to sound like what your pastor speaks at from the pulpit. In fact, a lot of times they don't talk about sex or marriage other than husbands love your wives and wives respect or honor your husbands. That's pretty much all you hear. And some marriage classes offer you some good tips about how to cope or handle situations. But they're coming from such a vanilla standpoint, honestly, that they really don't talk about the nitty-gritty of what marriage looks like.
Yeah, this is more
when
down
you're
in the dirt.
two humans who are not holy.
This is down in the dirt, kind of thing here. So, yeah, like I said, even in the good years, you got to communicate, and we look at these as the good years. But looking back on it now, we had these issues slowly rising to lead up to where we were, because we allowed them to continue to fester and go on. So that's
don't be like us. Don't be like us.
Don't let
Get
that happen.
on this before you're 8 years in and realizing that you suck at communicating.
And you have to work it all back out again. You have to figure it all, reboot, restart, and work it all, tear it all apart.
And if you are 8 years in, 10 years in, 35 years in, you literally start at the same place.
Yeah, it all starts from the beginning.
You have to start at the same place, which is literally start unpacking that suitcase full of little junk that you kept piling up over the years.
And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's scary. Both of us will tell you the same thing. When you start doing it, the initial conversations, shit's scary, because you're airing out everything. You're trying to get everything out. You're trying to clean out all the old resentments and old fears.
Speaking of, do you remember that one time?
But then you actually have to forgive each other and then talk about it, and that sometimes can be the hardest start. The hardest part is starting. But once you get started, I can guarantee you, once you start, it becomes easier. Every day becomes even easier to do it. And then you realize that in doing it, you'll feel better about yourself, about your relationship, about your partner, about your family, about everything in general. Will kind of ease up, because it's going to be, you're going to have an open conversation with someone.
So we have what we call now an open marriage, but it's not how society describes an open marriage. Our open marriage is we communicate everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Like
open
it
and
or
honest.
Not.
Open and honest, here I come.
Like it or not, we are 100% open with each other about all of our thoughts. Crazy thoughts, sane thoughts.
All of them. Mm-hmm. So.
And on cue, our toddler is up from his nap. So we're gonna leave you with a snippet of the song, and then my husband will check y'all out. You gonna sing it, baby?
I don't know. I don't know if I have the voice like you. All right, thank you for coming, and we will see you next episode.